my wife Mary, son Jonathan, daughter Suzanne, and I, Gordon Cook, set sail from Plymouth, England.
The author, Gordon Cook, with his family, had planned to sail around the world, similar to what James Cook did 200 years earlier. For the past 16 years, Gordon Cook and Mary had spent all their free time honing their seafaring skills in British waters. Honing seafaring skills, improving skills of sailing in the sea.
Our boat, named Wave Walker, was a 23-meter, 30-ton wooden-hulled beauty. Had been professionally built, and we had spent months fitting it out and testing it in the roughest weather we could find.
They had planned to go from Plymouth, England, to Cape Town, and from there to Australia through the southern Indian Ocean, one of the world's roughest seas. It was a 3-year, 105,000 kilometers journey. The first leg of the journey, that is, from Plymouth to Cape Town, went good. At Cape Town, they took 2 crewmates. One was an American, Larry Vigil, and the other was a Swiss, Herb Seigler. Why? To help them deal with the Indian Ocean.
On our second day out of Cape Town, we began to encounter strong gales.
Winds.
For the next few weeks, they blew continuously. Gales did not worry me, but the size of the waves was alarming, up to 15 meters, which was as high as our main mast.
Main mast? What is a mast? It is a part of the ship. In this chapter, many other parts are mentioned. Let's learn them at once, so that you don't get confused afterwards. A mast is a vertical pole on the ship that supports other parts. There can be multiple masts in a ship, and the central and the largest one is called the main mast. A sail is a fabric material attached to the mast that uses the wind for navigation. A storm jib is also a sail, but is in the forward. It is of small size and provides stability and control. A stern is the rear part of a boat. It contains the steering mechanism. Bow is the front part of the ship, used to reduce the air drag. A main boom is a horizontal pole attached to the mast to support the mast. Deck is the surface of the ship. Guardrails are edges of the ship's deck to prevent people from falling. Starboard refers to the right side of a ship, and port refers to the left side of the ship.
December 25th found us 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. Despite atrocious weather, we had a wonderful holiday complete with a Christmas tree.
Atrocious? Extremely bad.
New Year's Day saw no improvement in the weather, but we thought that it had to change soon. And it did change, but for the worse. At dawn on January 2nd, the waves were gigantic. We were sailing with only a small storm jib, and were still making 8 knots. As the ship rose to the top of each wave, we could see endless enormous seas rolling towards us, and the screaming of the wind and spray was painful to the ears. To slow the boat down, we dropped the storm jib and lashed a heavy mooring rope in a loop across the stern. Then we double-lashed everything, went through our life raft drill, attached lifelines, donned oilskins and life jackets, and waited.
They were making 8 knots. Knots is a unit of speed. Means they were going very fast. What steps did they take to manage? To slow down the boat, they dropped the storm jib. They tied a heavy mooring rope across the stern. Mooring rope, a rope used to tie the stern or other objects to the boat. They double-lashed everything. Means they tied everything tightly. They went through life raft drills. Means they did the procedure of using the life rafts to ensure that they were ready in case of emergency. They attached lifelines. Lifelines, strong ropes that prevent people from falling into the sea. They donned oilskins and life jackets. Oilskins are waterproof garments. They put on oilskins and life jackets. And they waited.
The first indication of impending disaster came at about 6 p.m., with an ominous silence.
Ominous silence, a silence indicating something bad might happen.
The wind dropped, and the sky immediately grew dark. Then came a growing roar, and an enormous cloud towards the stern of the ship. With horror, I realized that it was not a cloud, but a wave like no other I had ever seen. It appeared perfectly vertical, and almost twice the height of the other waves, with a frightful breaking crest.
Crest, the highest point of the wave.
The roar increased to a thunder, as the stern moved up the face of the wave, and for a moment, I thought we might ride over it. But then a tremendous explosion shook the deck. A torrent of green and white water broke over the ship.
Torrent, a powerful stream of water.
My head smashed into the wheel, and I was aware of flying and sinking below the waves. I accepted my approaching death, and as I was losing consciousness, I felt quite peaceful. Unexpectedly, my head popped out of the water. A few meters away, Wave Walker was near capsizing, her masts almost horizontal.
Capsizing, overturning of a ship.
Then a wave hurled her upright, my lifeline jerked taut. I grabbed the guardrails and sailed through the air into Wave Walker's main boom.
His lifelines jerked taut. What does this mean? It means that the lifeline, that is, the rope attached to him and the ship, became tightened. When he was thrown into the water, the lifeline became tightened that prevented him from drowning. He grabbed the guardrails and went into Wave Walker.
Subsequent waves tossed me around the deck like a rag doll. My left ribs cracked. My mouth filled with blood and broken teeth. Somehow, I found the wheel, lined up the stern for the next wave and hung on. Water, water, everywhere. I could feel that the ship had water below, but I dared not abandon the wheel to investigate. Suddenly, the front hatch was opened, and Mary appeared.
Hatch, an opening in a ship's deck, used to access compartments below.
We're sinking. The decks are smashed. We're full of water.
Take the wheel. Larry and Herb were pumping like madmen. Broken timber shung at crazy angles.
Timbers, wood pieces.
The whole starboard side bulged inwards. Clothes, crockery, charts, tins and toys sloshed about in deep water.
Sloshed about, floated around.
I half swam, half crawled into the children's cabin. Are you all right?
Yes, but my head hurts a bit.
Sue had a big bump above her eyes. I had no time to worry about bumped heads. After finding a hammer, screws and canvas, I struggled back on deck. With the starboard side bashed open, we were taking water with each wave that broke over us. If I couldn't make some repairs, we would surely sink. Somehow, I managed to stretch canvas and secure waterproof hatch covers across the gaping holes.
Canvas, a strong fabric, here used to patch the areas of damaged parts. Gaping holes, large openings.
Some water continued to stream below, but most of it was now being deflected over the side. More problems arose when our hand pumps started to block up with the debris floating around the cabins, and the electric pump short-circuited.
Debris, scattered pieces.
The water level rose threateningly. Back on deck, I found that our two spare hand pumps had been wrenched overboard.
Wrenched, torn away. Overboard, falling from a ship into the water.
Then I remembered we had another electric pump under the chart room floor. I connected it to an outpipe, and was thankful to find that it worked. The night dragged on with an endless routine of pumping, steering and working the radio. We were getting no replies to our Mayday calls, which was not surprising in this remote corner of the world.
Mayday calls are distress signals used in radio communication to indicate that a vehicle is in danger.
Sue's head had swollen alarmingly. She had two enormous black eyes, and now she showed us a deep cut on her arm. Why did you not tell more about your injuries before this?
I didn't want to worry you when you were trying to save us all.
In the morning on January 3rd, the pumps had managed to control the water level enough so could take rests one by one, for 2 hours. But we still had a big problem. There was a massive leak somewhere below the waterline.
Waterline, a line on the boat where the surface of water reaches.
When I checked, I discovered that almost all of the main rib frames of the boat were severely damaged, reaching all the way down to the keel. In fact, there was nothing holding up a whole section of the starboard hull, except a few cupboard partitions.
Rib frames are like skeleton of the ship. Keel, on the other hand, is like the backbone of the ship. Gordon Cook found that most of the rib frames were broken all the way down to the keel, and there was nothing supporting an entire section of the red side of the boat's hull except a few cupboard partitions. Cupboard partitions are walls used to store things. Because the rib frames were broken, a section of the boat's hull was supported only by the walls.
We had survived for 15 hours since the wave hit, but Wave Walker wouldn't hold together long enough for us to reach Australia. I checked our charts and calculated that there were 2 small islands a few hundred kilometers to the east. One of them, Ile Amsterdam, was a French scientific base. Our only hope was to reach these pinpricks in the vast ocean.
Pinpricks of the vast ocean signify that the islands are tiny as compared to size of the ocean.
But unless the wind and seas abated so we could hoist sail, our chances would be slim indeed.
Baited, become less intense.
The great wave had put our auxiliary engine out of action.
Auxiliary engine, secondary engine.
On January 4th, after 36 hours of continuous pumping, we reached the last few centimeters of water. Now, we had only to keep pace with the water still coming in. Mary found some corned beef and cracker biscuits, and we ate our first meal in almost 2 days, but our respite was short-lived.
Respite, a short period of rest.
At 4 p.m., black clouds began building up behind us. Within the hour, the wind was back to 40 knots, and the seas were getting higher. The weather continued to deteriorate throughout the night, and by dawn on January 5th, our situation was again desperate. I went in to comfort the children.
Daddy, are we going to die?
No, son. We can make it.
But Daddy, we aren't afraid of dying if we can obey together, you and Mommy, Sue and I.
I could find no words to respond, but I left the children's cabin, determined to fight the sea with everything I had. I decided to heave to, with the undamaged port hull facing the oncoming waves, using a sea anchor of heavy nylon rope, and 2 22-liter plastic barrels of paraffin.
Let me explain. The starboard side was damaged. You know, it is the right side of the ship. The author, heave to. Heave to means to stop the ship from going on any direction, and keep it in a single direction, such that the weakened starboard side would not damage more. The port side, that is, the left side of the ship was not damaged, so he made it to face the oncoming waves. But how? How did he stop the ship? And rotate it in a specific direction? He made an improvised sea anchor. Improvised sea anchor, an anchor made from material available, means it was not a real anchor. He made it using a nylon rope. One side of the roll was connected to the ship, and other to 2 heavy containers with paraffin in it. Paraffin, wax-like material. The reason the containers were used was that they were heavy and thus helpful in using the drag to slow down the ship. I hope you understood.
That evening, Mary and I sat together holding hands, as the motion of the ship brought more and more water in, through the broken planks. We both felt the end was near. But Wave Walker rode out of the storm, and by the morning of January 6th, with the wind easing, I tried to get a reading on the sextant.
Sextant, a navigation instrument used to determine the location of the ship.
Back in the chart room, I worked on the wind speeds, changes of course, drift, and current, in an effort to calculate our position. The best I could determine was that we were somewhere in 150,000 kilometers of ocean, looking for a 65-kilometer wide island. While I was thinking, Sue, moving painfully, joined me. The left side of her head was now very swollen, and her blackened eyes narrowed to slits. She gave me a card she had made. On the front, she had drawn caricatures of Mary and me, with the words,
"Here are some funny people. Did they make you laugh? I laughed a lot as well.
Inside was a message.
Oh, how I love you both." So this card is to say, thank you, and let's hope for the best.
Somehow we had to make it. I checked and rechecked my calculations. We had lost our main compass, and I was using a spare compass, which had not been corrected for magnetic variation. I made an allowance for this, and an estimate of the influence of the westerly currents which flow through this part of the Indian Ocean. About 2 p.m., I went on deck and asked Larry. "Larry, steer a course of 185 degrees. If we are lucky, you can expect to see the island at about 5 p.m. Then with a heavy heart, I went below, climbed on my bunk, and amazingly, slept. When I woke, it's 6 p.m. We must have missed the island. And with the sail we have left, we can't hope to beat back the westerly winds.
Can I have a hug?
Why am I getting a hug now?
Because you were the best daddy in the whole world, and the best captain.
Not today, John, I'm afraid.
Why, you must be. You found the island.
What?
It's out there
It's
in
out there in
front
front
of
of
us,
us,
as big as a battleship.
I rushed on deck and gazed with relief at the stark outline of Il Amsterdam. It was only a bleak piece of volcanic rock, with little vegetation, the most beautiful island in the world. We anchored offshore for the night, and the next morning, all 28 inhabitants of the island cheered as they helped us ashore. With land under my feet again, my thoughts were full of Larry and Herbie, who were cheerful and optimistic under the direst stress, and of Mary, who stayed at the wheel for all those crucial hours. Most of all, I thought of a 7-year-old girl, who did not want us to worry about a head injury, which subsequently took 6 minor operations to remove a recurring blood clot between skin and skull, and of a 6-year-old boy, who was not afraid to die